Service safe.
Professor Buzzkill. Mini Myths.
Look alive, Buzzkillers. It's the General here. That's right, General Buzzkill. I've been promoted from Professor because I'm here to talk about one of my fellow generals from history, and only generals can talk about other generals. That's right, I'm talking about Civil War General Joseph Hooker and his hookers. That's our mini myth for the week. Civil War Buzzkillers have been after me for months and months and months to put this commonly heard legend to rest, to put it to bed, so to speak. So here goes. Union General Joseph Fightin Joe Hooker was one of the most fascinating generals of the American Civil War. And that was a war with some real characters, Buzzkillers, as you know. He had a reputation, which is almost certainly exaggerated, as a hard drinker with a fondness for partying with women, even around military encampments. And he was also reportedly very popular with his men because he didn't crack the whip in terms of discipline and military correctness. He was even more popular with his men, so the stories go, because bands of prostitutes called Hooker's Brigade or General Hooker's Army followed his battalions and helped the men, relax after a hard day on the battlefield. There's even an oft-repeated story that a red light section of wartime Washington, D.C., near to where Hooker and his men were stationed, was known as Hooker's Division. These stories became so common that they spawned a famous myth. And that myth is that Fightin Joe's last name was the origin of the slang term for a prostitute, a hooker. Hookers were supposedly following their namesake throughout the Civil War, and unfortunately for his otherwise chaste reputation, shall we say, that myth has stuck. We know that this is a myth, and Buzzkill Institute researchers have confirmed it, because the slang term hooker in American English was used to refer to a prostitute at least as early as 1845. And in 1845, young Fightin' Joey was just a staff officer during the Mexican-American War, which was 1846 to 48, and probably didn't have the nerve to surround himself with swarms of prostitutes. Further, there's some evidence that hooker was in use as early as 1835. That year, the New York Transcript, a popular news sheet at the time, referred to a police court hearing in which a prostitute was called a hooker because, quote, she hangs around the hook. The hook in this case was Corlear's Hook, the sharply curved shoreline on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Further reference for this comes from John Bartlett's Dictionary of Americanisms, published in 1859, before, obviously, the Civil War started. Bartlett's dictionary defined a hooker as being a prostitute such as those patronized by sailors at Corlear's Hook, the area where there were, quote, a number of houses of ill fame frequented by sailors. So there's very, very strong evidence from multiple sources that hooker for prostitute was in use, at least in American English, well before the outbreak of the Civil War. It wouldn't be at all surprising, therefore, that soldiers and others might have made the obvious connection between Hooker's last name and the existence of prostitutes in and around Union Army encampments during the Civil War, and, of course, made jokes about it. But Fightin' Joe's family name was not the origin of the slang term hooker. You knew deep down it was too good to be true, right, Buzzkillers? Talk to you next week.